My husband criticized my appearance daily. Personal trainer said, I'm perfect and husband's now my ex fast. He says it again, right there in the mirror, like he's doing me a favor. You're going to wear that. His voice has that casual disgust baked into it. The same tone he uses when the trash starts smelling or when the dog throws up. I'm half zipped into a simple black dress, one hand behind my back, twisting and tugging because the zipper keeps catching. My stomach is already pulled tight from the way I've been holding myself all day, like my body is an apology I need to maintain. I look at his reflection instead of turning around, because if I turn around, I'll see his face and I'll fold. My hand slips off the zipper and the metal teeth scrape my skin. It stings. He doesn't notice. He's leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, scanning me like a receipt he's trying to dispute. The worst part is my mouth opens automatically, like my body has memorized the script. It's just dinner, I hear myself say. Too soft, too eager. I try to laugh, like we're joking, like I'm not already shaking. I thought it was nice. He snorts, a sound that makes my face heat up. Nice for who? You look puffy. He reaches past me and pinches the fabric of my waist like he's testing bread dough. You've been eating carbs again. My skin crawls where his fingers touch. I jerk away, and my shoulder hits the closet door hard enough that the hangers rattle. My heart does that stupid rabbit thing. Fast, panic, trapped, and suddenly I can't breathe, right? He rolls his eyes like my reaction is theatrics. Relax. I'm trying to help you. You get emotional about everything. It was a Tuesday night when I finally said the words out loud to someone else, and once I did, everything changed. Not in the movie way where you storm out with a suitcase and a soundtrack starts playing. More like you realize you've been living with a low-grade poison and you can't untaste it anymore. But to make sense of Tuesday, I have to back up because what my husband did wasn't one big dramatic moment. It was hundreds of small moments stacked on top of each other until I couldn't tell where his voice ended and mine began. We'd been together 6 years, married for 3. On paper, it looked normal. We met through mutual friends, we both had steady jobs, we moved in, we adopted a dog. We did the whole adult checklist. When people say he seems so nice, they're not lying. He was nice to other people. He was charming in public. He was the guy who carried boxes for neighbors and made jokes with waiters and remembered birthdays. He also had this habit, early on, of narrating my body like it was a project he'd been assigned. It started playful. The kind of comments you swallow because you don't want to be the sensitive girlfriend. If I wore leggings, he'd say, "Careful, those show everything." If I ate dessert, he'd raise his eyebrows and go, "Bold choice." If I skipped the gym for a week because I had the flu, he'd look me up and down and say, "You can tell." When I reacted, he'd grin and say, "I'm kidding. God, you're so dramatic." The thing is, I didn't look like some extreme before and after story. I was just a normal woman. I'd gained and lost the same 10 pounds most people gain and lose depending on stress, sleep, hormones, life. My clothes fit. My doctor never flagged anything. But my husband talked about my body like it was always on the verge of becoming unacceptable, like I was one lazy weekend away from being an embarrassment. And because I loved him and because I wanted to feel chosen, I started treating my body like something that had to earn his kindness. The daily criticism became routine, the way a dripping faucet becomes background noise until you try to sleep. Might want to fix your posture. You're slouching again. Your arms look soft in that top. Why do you always wear your hair like that? It makes your face look round. Don't you have anything more flattering? He said it when I was cooking. He said it when I was folding laundry. He said it when I got out of the shower, water still running down my thighs. When I was the most physically vulnerable and also, ironically, the most real. Sometimes he'd pretend to be helpful. I just want you to be the best version of yourself. Sometimes he'd get annoyed. You take everything as an attack. I tried everything to fix it. I bought new clothes. I did skincare routines. I started waking up earlier to do my hair. I downloaded calorie tracking apps and deleted them and downloaded them again. I signed up for gym memberships and then felt sick with anxiety the first time I walked in because I could already hear his voice telling me I look stupid. If I went to the gym, he'd ask, "What did you do? Did you actually work hard?" If I didn't go, he'd sigh loudly, like my laziness was happening to him. The really messed up part is how he made me believe I deserve the commentary. Like if I could just be prettier, tighter, more polished, he'd relax, and we'd be happy. I used to think marriage was supposed to feel like a safe place. Mine started to feel like an audition. The Tuesday I mentioned was after a long day at work. I'd been up since 6, I'd skipped lunch because of back-to-back meetings, and I came home to him sitting on the couch watching TV like he'd been there all day. I walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge and saw a takeout bag with his name written on it. Just his. He hadn't ordered for me. He hadn't texted to ask if I wanted anything. He just fed himself. I stood there staring at the bag like it was proof of something I didn't want to admit. He called from the living room. "There's salad stuff if you're hungry." Not, "I saved you something." Not, "I didn't know when you'd be home." Just salad stuff. Like I was a rabbit he kept around. I grabbed the bag and brought it into the living room, and my voice came out sharper than I expected. "You ordered food and didn't think to include me?" He didn't even pause the TV. "You're always complaining about calories," he said, like that was the obvious reason. "I figured you'd want something lighter." "I didn't ask you to control what I eat," I said. My hands were shaking, and I hated that I sounded like a teenager begging to be treated fairly. He finally looked at me, annoyed. "I'm trying to help you. You've been looking tired lately." I blinked. "Tired? I worked 10 hours today." He shrugged. "Still, it shows. Maybe if you took better care of yourself." Something in my brain went quiet, like the last shred of denial burned off. I heard myself say, very calmly, "Do you even like me?" He laughed once. "Here we go." "No," I said, and my voice got louder because my body was done whispering. "Seriously, do you like me? Or do you just like the idea of me being someone you can show off?" He stared at me like I'd asked a stupid question. "Why do you do this?" he snapped. "Why do you make everything about your feelings? You act like I'm abusing you." "I'm telling you the truth. Someone has to." That word, abusing, hung in the room like smoke. I hadn't used it. He did, like he knew how bad it sounded and wanted to shut it down before I could name it. I grabbed my keys and left. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed air that didn't feel like it belonged to him. I ended up sitting in my car in a grocery store parking lot, hands clenched around the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt. I didn't cry. I just stared at the rows of carts and the automatic doors and felt this hollow buzzing in my chest. My head kept replaying his phrases. "I'm helping. I'm telling you the truth. You're too sensitive." It was like living with a critic who lived inside my home and also inside my skin. I called my friend Mia because my fingers moved before my pride could stop them. Mia answered on the second ring. "Hey, I think something's wrong," I said, and my voice cracked and suddenly I couldn't hold it together. I think my husband hates me." There was a pause, the kind where someone chooses their words carefully. "Tell me what happened," she said. And I did. Not the whole history, just Tuesday night. The takeout bag. The tired comment. The way he used the word abusing like a weapon. Mia didn't say, maybe he didn't mean it. She didn't say, men are just blunt. She said, "That's not normal." My throat tightened. "He says he's helping." "Helping who?" Mia asked. "Because it's not helping you." That's when she said the phrase that made me feel like someone turned a light on. "That sounds like emotional abuse." I remember whispering, "No, he doesn't hit me." Mia sighed, not impatient, just sad. "I didn't say he hits you. I said he's hurting you." She told me to go home only if I felt safe. She told me to sleep at her place if I didn't. I went home because I still had that stupid hope that if I explained it right, he'd understand. He was in bed scrolling on his phone when I walked in. He looked up and said, like nothing happened, "You done being dramatic?" Something in me went cold. "I called Mia," I said. He sat up, eyes narrowing. "Of course you did. You always run to someone. You can't keep our issues private." "Our issues," I repeated. "You criticizing me every day isn't an issue. It's you treating me like I'm a problem." He scoffed. "If you took it as motivation, maybe you'd actually improve." I stared at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel like pleading. I felt done. Not furious. Just finished. The next morning, I scheduled a therapy appointment. Not couples therapy. Mine. Because I needed someone neutral to tell me whether I was losing my mind or finally seeing clearly. My therapist, Dr. Patel, listen while I try to be fair. I tried to include his good sides. I tried to explain that he had stress at work, that he was particular, that he meant well. Dr. Patel nodded, and then she asked a simple question. How do you feel in your own home? I opened my mouth and nothing came out, because the answer was embarrassing. On edge, I finally said, like I'm always about to be judged. And how often do you feel safe? She asked. I stared at the carpet. Not often. She didn't label him a narcissist or diagnose him or do any dramatic armchair psychology. She just said, consistent criticism about your appearance is emotional harm. It erodes your self-worth. That is not love. I went home with that sentence echoing in my head like a bell. Around that time, I signed up for a small personal training package at a local gym because I was desperate to feel strong again. Not skinny, strong, present, like my body belonged to me. His name was Jordan. He was annoyingly normal. No weird vibes, no motivational yelling, no creepy comments. First session, he asked what my goals were, and I almost said to not be disgusting because that's where my brain had gone. Instead, I said, I want to feel better. My voice shook on the word better. Jordan nodded like that was enough. We can do that, he said. We'll build strength and confidence. Slow and steady. The gym became this odd pocket of peace. For an hour, I focused on my breathing, my form, the way my muscles worked. Jordan corrected me with neutral language. Lift your chest, engage your core, nice control. No commentary about how I looked, just what my body could do. One day, after about a month, I came in wearing shorts because it was hot, and I spent the whole warm-up tugging at the hem like I was trying to hide my thighs. Jordan noticed, not in a weird way, just observant, and asked, Are you comfortable? I forced a laugh. Yeah, I just don't love my legs. He looked at me for a second, then said, very matter of fact, your legs are powerful. They carry you. They're doing their job. That's what matters. My throat tightened unexpectedly. Ibling shed fast, embarrassed. He added softer. And for what it's worth, you're perfect. Not in a poster way. In a human way. Your body is fine. You don't need to earn permission to exist. I stood there with a resistance band in my hands and felt something unclench inside me that I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. I didn't cry. I just nodded because if I opened my mouth, I knew everything would pour out. That night at home, my husband noticed the gym bag by the door and said, You're going again? Maybe it'll finally do something. I looked at him, and it was like hearing a language he used to speak fluently and suddenly didn't. Why do you say things like that? I asked quietly. He shrugged. Because it's true. I don't want to live like this, I said, and my voice surprised me because it sounded steady. He laughed, short and mean. Live like what? With a husband who's honest. No, I said. With a husband who thinks love is criticism. His face changed, annoyance flickering into anger because I was breaking the agreement. You've been acting weird since you started that gym, he snapped. You think you're better than me now? I stared at him, and my body did something new. It didn't rush to fix his feelings. It didn't apologize. It didn't explain. It just stayed. I think I'm allowed to be treated with kindness, I said. He scoffed. Kindness is overrated. Results matter. And that's when I realized we weren't just arguing. We were living in different moral universes. In his world, love was leverage. In mine, love was supposed to be care. The next few weeks were a blur of small decisions that added up to something irreversible. I started journaling what he said to me, not because I planned to use it, but because my therapist suggested I keep a record to combat gaslighting. The first day I wrote down, he said my stomach looked bigger today. The next day, he asked if I was going to wear makeup or give up. The next, he told me I'd be prettier if I smiled less. When you write it down, it looks uglier than it sounds in your head. It looks like a pattern instead of isolated jokes. I tried one more time to address it calmly. I sat him down and said, I need you to stop commenting on my body. It's damaging. It makes me dread being around you. He stared at me like I was asking him to stop breathing. So I can't say anything now? He snapped. I have to lie to protect your feelings? I'm not asking you to lie, I said. I'm asking you to be respectful. He leaned back and smiled, smug. Respect is earned. That sentence landed like a door slamming, because I realized he'd never believed I deserved basic respect as his wife. He believed respect was a reward he handed out when I performed correctly. That same week, he showed up at the gym unexpectedly. I was halfway through a set of deadlifts, sweaty, focused, actually feeling good in my body for the first time in forever. I saw him in the mirror behind me, arms crossed, watching. My stomach dropped like I'd been caught doing something wrong. My hands went clammy on the bar. Jordan noticed immediately. He stepped closer to me and said quietly, "You okay?" "My husband," I whispered. Jordan nodded once, then said, loud enough for my husband to hear, "Take a breath. Your form looks great. You got this." My husband walked over and looked me up and down like he was inspecting a product. "So this is what you do," he said, voice dripping with judgment. "Play gym girl." Heat rose in my face. People nearby glanced over. I felt the old instinct to shrink. Jordan didn't flinch. He just said evenly, "Hey, we're in the middle of a session. If you need to talk, please do it outside." My husband laughed. "Who are you?" he snapped. "Her boyfriend." Jordan's expression didn't change. "I'm her trainer, and I'm asking you to respect her space." My husband turned to me. "Are you seriously letting him talk to me like that?" His eyes were sharp, demanding my loyalty in front of strangers. My heart was pounding so hard it made my throat feel tight. I thought about saying, "Can we talk later?" I thought about smoothing it over. I thought about the dress zipper scraping my skin and his fingers pinching my waist and the takeout bag with his name on it. And instead, I did something that felt like stepping off a cliff. "Stop," I said, loud enough that my own voice startled me. "You don't get to humiliate me here." His mouth opened in disbelief. "Humiliate you? You criticize me every day," I said, and my hands were shaking, but I kept going. "You don't get to show up and do it in public, too." Jordan said quietly, "Do you want me to call the front desk?" I looked at Jordan and then back at my husband. My husband's face was flushed with rage and embarrassment, which in him always turned into cruelty. He leaned in slightly and hissed, "You're making a scene." "No," I said, and my voice got calmer. "You are." For a second, it looked like he might grab my arm, not to hit me, but to control me. The old fear flashed hot. Jordan stepped closer, not threatening, just present, and my husband seemed to realize he wasn't alone with me in our private little world where he always won. He pointed at me, eyes bright with anger. "Fine," he said. "Enjoy your little fantasy. Don't come crying to me when you realize you're not special." Then he walked out. I stood there with the barbell in front of me, lungs burning, legs trembling, and I realized something. The world didn't end. No one dragged me away. No one told me I was a bad wife. People just went back to their workouts. The gym stayed a gym. The earth kept spinning. Jordan waited until my breathing slowed and then said, very gently, "Do you want to keep training? Or do you want to go?" I swallowed hard. "I want to go," I said. He nodded. "Okay, grab your stuff. I'll walk you to your car." In the parking lot, I sat in my car with my hands gripping the steering wheel again. Same position as that grocery store parking lot, but different feeling. This time I wasn't confused. I was clear. I drove to Mia's house. When my husband called, I didn't answer. When he texted, I read it once. "You embarrassed me. Come home and apologize." My hands were shaking, but I didn't respond. I opened my notes app and wrote down the message, exactly as it was. My therapist's voice in my head, patterns don't lie. The next day, I went back to our house when I knew he'd be at work. I packed a suitcase. I took my important documents. I took the dog. I didn't take the couch throws, or the wedding gifts, or the blender. I just took my life. When he came home and found the dog gone, he called screaming. Actual screaming, like I'd stolen his property. "Bring him back," he yelled. "You can't just take him." "He's my dog too," I said, and my voice sounded oddly distant, like it belonged to someone else. "You're doing this because you're insecure," he spat. "Because you can't handle the truth." I took a breath. "I'm doing this because you're unkind," I said. "And I'm done living in a home where I'm constantly being cut down." He laughed harsh. "You think you'll find someone else? With your attitude? With your—" I cut him off, and that was another new thing. I'm not discussing my appearance with you anymore, I said. And I'm not coming back. He went quiet for a second, and then his voice changed, sweet, coaxing. Come on, don't be like this. We can talk. You're overreacting. That switch, that instant pivot from rage to charm, made my skin crawl. Because it wasn't love. It was strategy. I've already talked, I said. You didn't listen. I filed for separation within a week. That part is where people always assume there's some epic legal drama. But the truth is it was mostly paperwork and exhaustion. I found a lawyer through a recommendation. I opened my own bank account. I changed passwords. I moved into a small apartment with Mia's help. I cried in my car, sometimes for no reason, like my body was releasing years of tension it didn't know how to hold without him. He sent messages that swung wildly, apologizing, blaming, begging, insulting. One day it was, I miss you, I didn't realize. The next it was, you'll regret this when you hit the wall. He told mutual friends I got brainwashed by a trainer. He implied I was cheating. When people asked me privately, I said, I left because I was being emotionally harmed. Some believed me. Some didn't. The ones who didn't weren't safe anyway. Dr. Patel asked me in one session, what would you tell your best friend if she described this marriage? I didn't even hesitate. I'd tell her to leave, I said. And what does it mean, she asked gently, that you didn't offer yourself the same compassion? That question broke something open in me, because I realized how normal I'd made cruelty, how I trained myself to accept it. The divorce moved fast because there weren't kids and there wasn't a complicated asset situation. We split what we had. We negotiated the dog. I kept him because I was the one who actually took him to the vet and knew his food and noticed when his ears were itchy, and within a few months it was done. The day I signed the final papers, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt light, like I'd been carrying a heavy backpack for years, and someone finally took it off. The weirdest part is how my body changed after I left. Not dramatically, not in some revenge glow-up montage. But my face softened because I wasn't clenching my jaw all the time. My shoulders dropped. My digestion got better. I slept. I laughed more. I ate food without hearing a running commentary in my head. I started buying clothes because I liked them, not because they hid something. I started taking pictures with friends without immediately checking my arms and my chin and my posture. Jordan became, intentionally, background again. He kept it professional. He never made about him. He didn't play hero. He just continued to train me the way he always had. Respectful, steady, focused on what my body could do. The first time I deadlifted my own body weight, I laughed out loud like a kid. Jordan grinned and said, "Told you. Strong." One day, months later, I ran in my ex at a grocery store. I was in leggings and a hoodie, hair up, no makeup, pushing a cart with dog food and cereal and fruit. The old version of me would have panicked, would have tried to look put together. Instead, I just existed. He looked me up and down, and I waited for the old sting. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something nasty. Then he paused, eyes narrowing, like he couldn't find the same power. Because the power was never in his words. It was in my belief in his words. He finally said, sneering, "You look different." I smiled, small and real. "I feel different," I said, and I kept walking. Later that night, I sat on my couch in my little apartment, the dog's head heavy on my lap, and I thought about how my husband used to tell me I was lucky he was honest. Lucky he cared enough to correct me. Lucky he tolerated me. And I realized the personal trainer wasn't the point. The gym wasn't magic. The words, "you're perfect," weren't some external validation I needed to replace my husband's criticism. They were just the first time in a long time someone looked at me without trying to mold me into a version that served them. My ex used to criticize my appearance daily like it was his job. He didn't do it because I was flawed. He did it because if I stayed insecure, I'd stay small. I'd stay grateful for scraps. I'd stay controllable. I'm not angry all the time now. Sometimes I'm just sad that I lost years trying to earn softness from someone who only knew how to sharpen. Sometimes I'm embarrassed that I stayed. Sometimes I still hear his voice in my head when I catch my reflection in a harsh bathroom light. But then I remember what it felt like to be in that gym, hands on the bar, heart racing, and to choose myself out loud. To say stop, to leave. He's my ex fast, yeah. Not because I replaced him with someone better in a week. Not because I suddenly became fearless. Because once I finally believed I deserved kindness, staying became impossible.